really dislike these arguments that are made, and we hear them by these hyper individualists, which are really just selfish individuals. And I guess the skeptic community and the like, that the focal point is the individual and the collective is immaterial, as though the hidden hand is going to result in a collective good if everybody is being selfish. That is not the case. We can see that in specific scenarios where, for example, as with Smith's dictum, that the butcher, his endeavor to earn his living by providing us with meat is serves both himself and ourself. But as you were saying, the individual is supported by the entire community. That is how the individual moves ahead. It's also to our detriment when we believe ourselves, and it's an erroneous notion that we believe ourselves to be just these individuals making everything happen for ourselves, because we deprive ourselves of the shoulders that we would otherwise stand on to do truly great things. So it is history, it is our pride in our history and in our people that enables us to climb up on their shoulders and to do things that otherwise we would not have been able to do. People who are derived, and this is the case with our race today, people who are derived of their history and their pride are radically diminished thereby. There's just no escaping it. If you begin in a vacuum, that's largely where most people are going to end up, is in the vacuum. But even, where you were saying where someone were to go, say, live in the woods or something, that individual did not invent the language that he or she is using. That was given to him. That was a gift to him. He or she did not invent the deductive logic that is passed down from mother's milk to baby. That was given to him. The mathematics, that was given to him. The knowledge of how maybe to build that cabin in the woods, that was given to him. How to dig that well. He didn't invent all of those things. So these hyper individualists are just selfish people. And if they could be put into some sort of thought experiment where they received nothing prior to the thought experiment, they would die lonely and in the woods, if you will, with nothing to build upon. They would live like pure animals. So yeah, it is this notion that the individual is the paramount and the collective is immaterial is clearly an erroneous notion. And you're right when you move on to what you were saying about how most people don't appreciate and understand that we have a military class guarding the gates. I think many of those people in the military don't even know their role, because the problem is that we are reared in Western civilization, and Western civilization is a nursery room. It has no contact with the law of the jungle, no contact with the real world. What's the quote? There's a quote. It will come back to me in a minute, but it's, those who abjure violence can only do so because others are committing violence on their behalf. So that's the reality of how the order of the world is maintained. And these voices that are raised by people who are grossly ignorant of the real world, they are in error at every step of the way.
Yeah, we have to take their perceived status away from them, that these people should be listened to and taken seriously. Um, Wrapping up this individual versus collectivism, the first video, I should also say, I just remembered a point I'm making, that is, I've heard the challenge: you can show demonstrable harm to an individual when their rights are infringed upon. How do you show demonstrable harm to a group, to a collective, to a society, to a people? Again, as you were saying, it's set up as if the collective is just this abstract idea floating in the ether. And if it's an abstract idea, how can it take precedence over a living, breathing individual in front of you? You don't want to offend or harm this individual in front of you. And I set up a definition of demonstrable harm to the collective right from the get go in that first video. And it's that this collective's story is interrupted. So things can change, and we're going to get to this in later discussions, because especially, this is a key thing to remember, especially in the West, especially for European peoples, There are a lot of changing institutions and philosophies. We are not a static people. So, ironically, it is our dynamism that sometimes makes us hard to pin down. So, yes, there are changes. Nothing's going to be the same. Language evolves, different aspects of the culture evolve. England today, even minus all the migrant stuff, looks different than the England of Shakespeare's time. Fine. But there's still a story, there's still a through line. As I said in another video, I don't look the same way now that I did when I was 5 years old. I don't think the same way now that I did when I was 5 years old, and I won't when I'll be a different man somewhat when I'm 75. But does that mean I'm a different person? It's still the same Jared. So a people, a nation has a story. And if you interrupt their story and if you interrupt the space, because everyone needs territory, and as I said, territory is not just land, it's also psychological, mental, emotional, spiritual. As you said, a lot of people are very weakened right now because of everything in the air, all the ideas out there that are making people mute their connection to their heritage and want to advocate for it and have any pride in it and go drink from that wellspring. So when a people's territory, when their space is shrinking and it's attacked, that is demonstrable harm as well. So don't tell me there's no such thing as demonstrable harm. We are seeing demonstrable harm in the Western world right now.
Right, precisely. Great point. And I've written down that note as well. Everybody in the chat, I boosted Jared's volume a little bit. If you can hear him better when he's
Oh, I can
speaking
boost it a
now.
little here too if you need me to. Tell me, tell me if that's a little better.
Yeah, let us know if you can hear Jared a little better relative to the volume of my voice. But yeah, I wrote a note to myself as well about the collective and the story being the collective story being compromised, precisely because that story is the collective's identity. So by interrupting that story, redefining that story, which is largely the tool of the anti-whites. I've been arguing that recently on several other discussions, that it's not that our precepts or ideas or laws are such that we end up with the result of multiracialism and an undermining of our identity. It's that largely, mostly malicious anti-whites, and with the aid of a few uh, unintended misinterpretations from benign people, but almost entirely anti-whites, maliciously reinterpret our ideas, precepts, laws, history, historical events to mean something other than they are meant to mean. And so it should be and of course, let me just complete that thought, that the reason they do that is for achieving an anti-white objective, the infliction of harm on our people, to change our history and to change the definition of who we are, is to control our destiny. And by doing so, they can drive us into any dead-end alley or grave that they so desire. And that's what they're doing. You know, they're saying in America, for example, and I'm sure we could get examples from all over the Western world, but redefining our founding documents to mean that this is the outcome that is inevitable based on those ideas that were enshrined by your founding fathers. Ergo, you cannot complain about it, which is utterly absurd. You can never. We've done this for too long. Whites have. We have sacrificed our people on the altar of ideas, and there has to be an input to that at once. So yeah, it is our story. Our collective story is. You really hit the nail on the head. That is who we are as a people, and I think it should be of a healthy people will guard its narrative arc through history and preserve it and ennoble it as they move forward. That is the purpose of a hierarchy. That is the only true and healthy goal of a people relative to their narrative arc. So you also said in the first video, I wrote a note here about the collective to protect the individual. I don't quite remember what I was thinking when I wrote that, but does that spark anything for you?
The collective to protect the individual is your note?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's it's not sparking any specific line of thought I had in the video, but I think that idea is naturally wrapped up in everything that we're talking about.
Right. I think what it was saying to me when I was watching your video, and perhaps this is just a thought that came to me while watching, is that we are harmed as individuals because we are attacked as a collective, and that's what our people really have to appreciate. You're not going to escape the harm inflicted on you as a white person by attempting to identify with another group, claim that your identity is something other than a particular race, that you are a civic nationalist, for example. If you are white, you are going to be harmed individually because we are attacked collectively. There's no getting out of that.